Welcome back everyone. Hi, if you're new, I'm Tori, and today I want to wrap up the books that I read in January, but then also share with you some of my current reads. So far, I have no complaints. I think this is one of the strongest starts to a reading year I've had in a very long time in terms of what I've read and what I'm currently reading. And I think it just can only go up from here. I have some really good books that I want to chat about. 4 read, 3 current. Let's get into it. Let's start with the soul-crushing, frustrating book that was Iron Gold. This put me through a series of emotions I just didn't realize I was capable of having, especially after reading the original trilogy. It keeps going. The stress keeps going. The intensity keeps going. I loved every second of it. So this is book 4 in the Red Rising saga, but it's technically the start of like the new era of the story. I don't condone violence, but this is really the kind of book that makes you want to slap a few characters. It really does bring out some frustrations in you while you're reading it, but I think that's a testament to the fact that I love these characters so much. I love Daryl so much. So watching him make some of the decisions that he does throughout Iron Gold, it's almost like watching someone just throw away everything that they've worked for, essentially. Iron Gold picks up many years after the events of Morningstar. In this book, instead of just Daryl's POV, we do have 3 other characters who we're introduced to. 2 of them were actually characters in the original trilogy, but they were so minor in the OG trilogy. I think one of the new POVs was only mentioned like a couple of times in Morningstar, and one was a minor character, but could tell, you know, something was going to happen with this character going forward. So those 2 characters have their own chapters in Iron Gold, but we're also introduced to a new character entirely, who is this young woman living on Mars. I won't lie, I think it was a little bit jarring at first just because I was so used to Daryl's perspective for 3 books that now it's like you're sharing him with other people. But I will say over the course of the book, 2 of the characters really grew on me. One of them, the one who was in the original trilogy, that's another one that I just want to slap around a little bit. Every time I read another book in the Red Rising series, it really just solidifies the fact that this is one of my all-time favorite series. I keep saying this, but I love Pierce Brown's character work. And though Daryl made frustrating decisions, and it does feel like you're just watching someone you love just throw everything down the toilet, the things that Daryl is doing makes sense for his character. What I love about Iron Gold is the fact that Pierce Brown really makes you confront the fact that the things that Daryl did throughout Red Rising, Golden Sun, Morningstar, they have real consequences. And now we're starting to see the anger, the frustration, the tension, the chaos that a lot of the decisions in the original trilogy had on real characters on all these different planets. And so now in Iron Gold, we've reached the situation where there are so many different ideas, not so many different, but there are vastly different ideas about what peace looks like and actually how to go about achieving peace. And Daryl has his own idea of how to go about it. The people who were on the receiving end of Daryl's actions throughout the original trilogy, they have their own motivations. Iron Gold is a serious clash of all of that, and it just gets more intense and more just more intense as the book goes on, and you're seeing the story unfold through these 4 different perspectives. Loyalties in this book, long-time friendships, just so many things are tested to the brink in this book. And as someone who loves these characters dearly, it does hurt to read because you're just like, it can't end like this. So this was amazing. I just continue to be so in love and invested in these characters and this overall story. I love how the world of Red Rising has expanded over the years, and I cannot wait to read Dark Age, but I'm not gonna lie, I'm terrified. Now let's get into Pines by Blake Crouch. This is the first book in the Wayward Pines trilogy. This was so good. I was already talking about this book at the beginning of the month, and you guys know already that I'm just obsessed with Blake Crouch's work anyway. I just thought this was so twisty and entertaining. There was not a single point in this book where I felt like I knew where things were going. And then by the end, when things were actually revealed, I was blown away. If you're unfamiliar, so Pines, this is the story of Ethan Burke. He is a federal agent, and he is sent to the town of Wayward Pines to find out what happened to other federal agents who fell off the radar when they entered the town. And so the longer Ethan is in this town, the more he realizes that things are just so off. Just things are weird. He can't, he can't really do anything. He can't get in contact with his wife. He can't get in contact with his boss who sent him there, and things are just not what they should be. And as he's walking around the town, things are just really strange, and the citizens are kind of creepy. And I feel like there are really only so many ways a story like this can go, and you just in the back of your mind, you just have like kind of a running list of theories already, like, oh, I wonder if it's that. I'm telling you, nothing could have prepared me for what came out about what was going on in the town of Wayward Pines. This was amazing. And you know what the thing is, I'm still not 100% sure I quite believe what happened at the end of this book. So I still have my little spidey senses going off, like, oh, maybe that's not right. But we'll see where it goes. The atmosphere of this book I thought was incredible. And at the beginning while reading this, I mentioned that it was giving me like kind of Twin Peaks vibes, almost like Alan Wake vibes, if you're a fan of the game Alan Wake. And then at the end, Blake Crouch, in his notes, he actually mentioned that Twin Peaks is what was a big inspiration. And I'm like, that makes perfect sense. So if you're a Twin Peaks fan, maybe pick this up. But if you're just a fan of Blake Crouch and twisty stories and things like this, I would say pick it up anyway. This was such a great read. This was actually the first book I finished in the year, and I thought this was an amazing way to kick off 2023. I cannot wait to continue with book 2. And then next I read The Last Watch by J.S. Dews, and this is book 1 in the Divide duology. I'm not sure if it's going to continue on or if it's going to be, a trilogy series, but so far there's 2 books published. And this is a space opera, and I really enjoyed this. I'm really getting my feet a little bit more into the space opera subgenre. And actually, the author of Velocity Weapon, Megan O'Keefe, blurbed this. And the whole time I'm thinking like, yeah, if you like Velocity Weapon, maybe you should read this too. This was really good. And lately, I feel like I've been reading a lot of sci-fi books that have that like cinematic quality to it. And this is no different. So in this, we're following the crew of the Argus. And people on this ship, they are, for lack of a better word, criminals. So they are all part of the military for the most part, except for one of our main characters. And in the past, they've all done something to be sent to the Argus. And, whether it's like theft or perjury or treason, anything like that. And so our crew of the Argus, they are at the Divide, which is known as like the very far edge of the universe. So they're out there to guard things, keep up the buoys, keep up maintenance, that sort of thing. But also it turns out that the Divide something is going on with the Divide that really threatens all of humanity. And it becomes up to them, this crew, who are all criminals, who really nobody wants to deal with, to find out what's really going on and essentially save humanity. At the same time, there's also a looming threat from this alien species that humanity has been in wars with in centuries past that could be on the horizon again. So even though we do have our crew of the Argus, 2 of our main characters are this young man named Cavalon, who is actually pretty smart, but he's done his own things to end up on the Argus, and he's not someone who's been part of the military. And we also have our main character, Adequin, who I really enjoyed in this book, and she is in charge of the Argus, and she's essentially known as like a war hero, but again, you don't land on the Argus if you're like squeaky clean. So she's definitely done some things in her past too to land her in this position. So I really enjoyed this overall. I enjoyed the found family aspect of this book, but also the friendship that starts to develop between our 2 main characters. I think this was such a fun space opera, just full of action. It was intense, great friendships, and I cannot wait to read book 2. And then last but certainly not least is Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo, which is the long-awaited sequel to Ninth House. So I do have a vlog going into a little bit more detail about my thoughts on Hellbent, but just to summarize those thoughts here, I liked it, but given how much I love Ninth House and how much I was anticipating Hellbent, I think it was disappointing in the fact that I didn't love it. And there's a couple of reasons for that. I think there were just a couple of subplots in here that, overall didn't really do anything for me at the end of the day. The things that I liked about Ninth House are the same things that I liked about Hellbent, but there are more things sprinkled into Hellbent that I just wasn't a big fan of. Well, Hellbent picks up in the fall, so after the events of the first book. So something big happens at the end of Ninth House that shapes the entire course of Hellbent. So Alex and her small group of friends and acquaintances, they set out to find someone who is lost. And that's the whole like overarching storyline for Hellbent. But there are little things sprinkled in here and there that just, I think, made the story just feel a little bit too meandering. There's a subplot dealing with characters from Alex's life back in Los Angeles that just kept popping up throughout Hellbent, and I'm just like, why? Like, let's leave them alone. Like, I'm not really interested in any characters now from Los Angeles. Like, let's just focus on Yale. Let's focus on the current problem. I feel like those characters, or the main character who is kind of giving her trouble from Los Angeles in this book, is not really intriguing in the way characters like Lynn and Helly were in Ninth House. So I just wasn't a big fan of that. And also, I said this in the vlog, but Hellbent it's good, but it feels like the kind of story where you're reading it, but sometimes it just feels like really nothing is going on, and like all these pages have gone by and you're finally on page 400 and you're just like, what has happened so far? Like, how did we get here? And one of my other issues with the book is I feel like Alex, I love Alex. I loved her in Ninth House. And this is weird to say because she is the main character, but I feel like she didn't pop as much, you know, as she did in Ninth House. She was more, you know, felt like she was taking more of a back seat in her own book. I think that a lot of that had to do with the fact, though, that there were other characters who were getting a little bit more attention in this book, characters that I actually loved, like Dawes. I thought she was great. Turner, I enjoyed him in Ninth House, and he got a little bit more time in this book, which was nice to see. So there were characters that Alex had to align herself with in order to find this missing person. But I also feel like in doing so, some of her personality just felt a little bit lost along the way. So those are kind of my cons with the book overall, but just I felt like reading it, nothing was really moving me, really exciting me in the way that I was hoping it would. So I think for that reason, it was just a little bit disappointing. But some of the things that I loved about the book that I thought were just standouts in this was the research. Them actually trying to figure out how to find this missing person, the steps that they had to go through. I loved the history of all of that. We also got more history about the societies. And something that I was really surprised to see is we really got into the racist history of some of these societies and how they came to power and came to prominence through some of those more racist pasts. So I thought that was really interesting. The other thing I really enjoyed about this book, though, was the creepiness of everything. Don't underestimate this book. Like, it's not a horror novel, but there really are some moments that genuinely freaked me out. And just the way, maybe I'm just sensitive to that anyway, but the way that biblical references are woven into the story and the references to hell that Leigh Bardugo makes, and the way that, you know, the way that the different creatures and demons behave, just the way that that is featured in the story, I think is genuinely unsettling. I will be reading the third book, and that's the other thing. I think this could have easily been a duology, just Ninth House and Hellbent. I really hope the trilogy will be it, because I don't see how this story can stretch out any further than it already has. Overall, Hellbent was good, but was it this big, exciting, amazing, mind-blowing, anticipating sequel I was hoping for? Unfortunately not. Now let's get into my current reads. I have 3 I want to talk about. I'm going to go through these pretty quickly. The first is The Tyranny of Faith by Richard Swan. This is book 2 in the Empire of the Wolf trilogy. You guys know already, The Justice of Kings was one of the best books I read in 2022. It was amazing. I have been anxiously awaiting the sequel ever since then, and Orbit was kind enough to approve an e-arc for me. So this book actually comes out on February 14th. And so far I forgot where I left off. So far I am, let's see, my Kindle's waking up. I'm at 41% into this book. You guys, this is really good. This is the sequel. Like, this, not that Hellbent is not a sequel, but like, this is it. I am truly in love with The Tyranny of Faith. I think if you loved specific things about The Justice of Kings, you will love The Tyranny of Faith. For example, if you loved the politics, but you wanted a little bit more, if you were fascinated by just the world at large and you wanted a little bit more Justice of Kings, I think Tyranny of Faith will do it for you. This book is all politics. It's the fabric of the story. It's woven into every page. I loved everything about The Justice of Kings, so I knew when Tyranny of Faith began to settle into its more like politically driven storyline, I was going to love this. Von Valt, oh my God, this is actually amazing to me. Von Valt is a man who already has so much power, so much authority, And in this book, I think more so than the Justice of Kings, you really see that put to the test. He's doing what he can to weed out the treason in the empire and really stop the bleeding before things just get totally out of control. This book picks up pretty quickly after the Justice of Kings. There is a little bit of a time lapse due to just travel, but where the characters were headed at the end of book 1 is where we're starting in book 2. So like they've been traveling in the in-between publishing time. And so now we're picking up with that, and they make it there, and they are just steeped in treason and conspiracy, and Von Vault, his morality and the way that he handles that is just really, it's his feet are to the fire. And again, like in book 1, we are reading all of that through the perspective of Helena, who is still his apprentice, still his clerk. The thing that I love about Tyranny, more than Justice of Kings in terms of Helena, is the fact that there are so many moments where you feel like she's not even narrating the story, like where you feel like she's not even there. She's so good about letting a scene play out without interrupting things. It is in first person, but there are just sometimes pages where you don't see a single eye because she's just letting the narrative unfold, and I love that. It's so good. And if you liked the more detective mystery aspect of Justice of Kings, there is a subplot in here that I think could really work for you. But overall, this is all politics. This is all morality being tested. This is great. I will be picking up my physical copy of this on February 14th, and I will be finishing this very soon. I'm almost done with this. Like I said, I'm about 41% of the way in. It's gonna carry me into February because it's only like a couple of days left now in the month. So it's gonna carry me into the new month, but I'm gonna wrap this up really soon, and it's gonna be a good time. And then my other current read is Empire of Silence by Christopher Rocchio, and this is book 1 in the Sun Eater series. I'm not making good progress in this at all. I wanted to be finished with this in January, but I'm on page 51, where I have been for a very long time. And it's not because it's not good or anything. I am enjoying it. This has been said to be really great for fans of The Name of the Wind and Red Rising. But I don't really agree with the Name of the Wind comparison this early on. I feel like at this point, any, epic sci-fi, epic fantasy book where a character is telling the story in his own words is going to be like, this is great for Name of the Wind fans. And I don't like The Name of the Wind, you guys. So if you are like me and you also are not the biggest fan of Name of the Wind, like, don't let that comparison turn you off from this book, because it really just is. This character is telling you his story in his own words. And also, I think it's because the prose in The Name of the Wind just gets all of this praise, and it is beautiful. Like, Patrick Rothfuss is an amazing writer, but I think also Empire of Silence has that kind of sweeping prose structure that I think could lend itself to Name of the Wind comparisons. But just as far as actual story goes, I don't really see it. We're following our main character Hadrian in this, and if anything, sorry, this is a tangent, but if anything, it kind of reminds me of Dune. As I was about to start explaining like the premise of it, not that it's similar to Dune, but like I get more like Dune vibes, if anything. I don't know, maybe I'm just wrong. Ignore this whole portion of the video. But we're following our main character Hadrian. We learn on page 1, first sentence, that he has destroyed a sun and has killed billions of people. So he is infamous. And this whole first book, and I'm guessing maybe the rest of the series, I think it's 5 books out so far, he is telling us in his own words like his life story, like what happened, what led to this point, and yeah, how did we get here. So just that, I think, hooks you pretty immediately. And from there we go back and we learn more about his upbringing, and I think this is where it's giving me like the maybe larger Dune comparison vibes, is because we're getting into like the noble houses and the politics, and he comes from a noble house, so we're getting a lot of that going on. And we see the relationship that he has with his brother. We see the things that could eventually be driving him away from his home. So that's really what's going on at the moment. But overall, I think this is going to be just a sweeping, epic sci-fi tale, and I am enjoying it so far. Still very early in and a long way to go, but I think this is one that I'm really gonna love by the end of it. And then last but certainly not least, I am currently reading Sword of Destiny, which is the second short story collection in the Witcher series by Andrzej Sapkowski. And this is the beautiful new hardcover edition from Orbit. And each book features a different character from the series. And here, of course, we have the one and only Yennefer. So far, I've read through 2 of the short stories. So I've read The Bounds of Reason and I've read A Shard of Ice. So I'm currently on the first chapter of Eternal Flame. So this is going really well. And of course, the common thread throughout the stories has been Yennefer. I think I'm just more excited to start my Witcher reading journey with Blood of Elves, but I am gonna keep making my way through this. It has been good so far, just getting to know a little bit more about, you know, characters like Yennefer and Dandelion, people like that. So I can't wait to keep reading more of this. I'm not loving it, but it is really good. Yeah, I feel like I don't have any grand thoughts to add about this, but I am going to keep making my way through this and will be updating you when I finish it. So that is it for me, you guys. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. Let me know how January went for you, what your favorite and least favorite books were for the month. I want to hear about it, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.